This is where I slept.
I made quite a few bad decisions early on in life and found myself pregnant and homeless on the streets of downtown Seattle.
Jeremiah had a difficult charge from God to proclaim and witness the destruction of Judah and Jerusalem while delivering God's message in the face of unrelenting opposition. In our lesson, God says to Jeremiah, "Go to the palace of the king of Judah and speak." Now, let's pause here. Jeremiah loved his people with his whole heart. He was in perpetual pain because of their stubbornness, so much pain that they say that his tragedy caused his tears to flow day and night. Jeremiah was inspired not merely to be a priest, but to be a bold prophet, willing to tell the truth even at the risk of angering kings and those in power. So after he is to go to the palace, which was just down the hill from where Jeremiah lived, Jeremiah is commanded to tell the members of the royal house a message from God. Now, this recognizes that Jeremiah will not likely get to speak to the king. He's just going to speak to the people who are in the king's household. Jeremiah is told to speak with authority, for he is under the directions of God. He was told and he expected the people of Jerusalem to listen and to take heed. Now, Jeremiah today would be called a social justice advocate, preaching a sort of liberation theology. Jeremiah is disturbed about how they were treating each other, the social injustices that were being forced upon fellow men. He was disturbed about the oppression. So he says, practice justice and righteousness. Save those who are cheated or robbed from their oppressor. Do not mistreat. Do not do violence to strangers or the fatherless or widows. Because of their history, the Jewish people, when they came out of captivity in Egypt, had some specific guidances on fairness and kindness to orphans, widows, and immigrants. Jeremiah is to tell them to do not shed blood of the innocent. But Jeremiah does more than that. He tells them there are consequences to your choices. If you obey these words, then the legacy of David will continue, himself, his servants, and his people. But if you disobey these words, then you can be assured that God will ruin this palace. In essence, the Davidic rule will end. Now Jeremiah is using poetry to explain the results of disobedience. In paralleling Israel to Gilead and Lebanon, he is pronouncing how beautiful the country is, but then how devastated the nation will be if God is disobeyed. Judah will become a wilderness. Judah's cities will be uninhabitable. Yahweh will consecrate the army of the destroyer. Yahweh is not on Judah's side. Judah will face devastation. The enemy will cut down Israel's best forests and burn them. In essence, the invaders will destroy the wealth of Israel, their resources, and will plunder and waste those resources. Now, if you recall, in those days, every nation had its own national deity. The more powerful deities were credited with victories in battle. So when other nations would see the devastated cities that Jeremiah is talking about, the other nations would ask, what happened? What has the Lord done? Some might think that Yahweh was weak because the northern kingdom was exiled by the Assyrians and the southern kingdom was defeated and exiled by the Babylonians several times. But Jeremiah says the answer will be clear. The real problem was the sin of the covenant people, not Yahweh. In this part of the poem, Jeremiah addresses the issue of the Davidic seed. he talks about sin and sinful leaders, that there are consequences to them. Not only will the leaders and their nations be destroyed, but their legacy will be destroyed. History will not treat them fondly. So there is a series of commands here. Do not weep for the dead. Do not mourn for him. The king shall never return from captivity. In this, Jeremiah could be saying that the king will never return from a geographic perspective to Israel, or he could be speaking metaphorically, saying the king will never repent and never return to a proper relationship with God, and therefore will never return to the throne. In either case, according to Jewish historian, King Zedekiah was the last Davidic ruler of the geographic region of Israel. Even though Jesus was of the house of David, his kingdom was not of this world, and he did not focus on land, rather on souls. In this lesson, we see the importance of how we relate to others, how we treat others. Our relationship with God requires us to look beyond our wants and to act justly, repenting for our injustices. That's the lesson for this week. Have a great week.
At the baptism, I felt completely forgiven. I felt like a new woman. Like, here, you get to start over again. You get a do-over.